Welcome back to Math 103. This is video number 17 on fair division. The next example works through a very important problem type for the lone divider method. It does not involve any dollar values and is very similar to an example that we did for the divider-chooser method involving a timeshare. Jason, Kelly, and Lauren share the rights to use a certain store location in the mall, but they have separate businesses and only one can use the space at a time. Right. So thus far it sounds exactly like the setup we've used for fair division problems using divider-chooser, in other words, when there were only 2 players. Now we're extending it to 3 players. So the 3 of them need to produce a fair division of the access time to this retail space. As in previous problems of this type, we're going to assume that January 1st must be one of the turnover dates. So in other words, ultimately, one player is going to get the space from January 1st until a certain date. We're given the following preference information, which does not involve any dollar values, but is going to invite us to set up a point scheme, or something equivalent. So Jason runs a business which can make the same amount of money each month. Kelly runs business which can make the same amount during each of the first 9 months, January through September, but nothing during the last 3 months. And finally, Lauren runs business which can make 3 times as much during each of the last 3 months as during each of the first 9 months of the year. We can ask the following questions. Suppose that they use the lone divider method. What happens, quite specifically, if Jason is the divider? In other words, where exactly does he divide, and which of his shares are fair shares for each of Kelly and Lauren? As a follow-up, we can then ask, can we obtain a fair division without having to resolve a standoff? Is it possible to give Jason one of his shares, to give Kelly one of the shares Jason divided, and to give Lauren one of the shares that Jason divided without having to go back and form a super share and redo any of the divisions? Just as in the divider-chooser method problems that had this kind of a setup, the first thing we need to do here is sort out a point scheme, point assignments for each of the players, to have a concrete way of representing their valuations of the various months of the year. There are different ways to do this, and what's given right here is one way. This is probably the easiest way, but there are others. If you prefer to set something up involving dollar amounts that you make up for each month, that's perfectly fine, as long as for each player they are in the correct proportions to one another. Okay. And notice also we have zeros here for October, November, December. Kelly just has the kind of business that doesn't make money in those months, and so we represent that with 0 points each. Now that we have a point scheme, we can go back and answer our questions. What happens specifically if Jason is the divider? In other words, where during the year does he divide, and which of his shares are fair shares for Kelly, which of his shares are fair shares for Lauren? Well, Jason values each month equally, so it was natural to assign each month a value of 1 point. That makes the year worth 12 points total. And so he is going to divide the year since January 1st has to be one of the division points, so from January to April is 4 Jason points worth of time. From May through August is another 4 Jason points, and then September through December is another 4 Jason points. So that divides the year into 3 equally valuable parts from Jason's point of view. Remember, it has to be 3 equal parts, 3 equally valuable parts to Jason, because this is the lone divider method, and there are 3 players. So he must divide into 3 equally valuable parts to him. To make these easier to refer to later, let's give names to the shares. So we're going to call this share 1, January through April, this share 2, or S2, May through August, and this one S3, September through December. Of the 3 shares that Jason has marked off, which ones are fair shares for Kelly? Well, from Kelly's point of view, the whole year is worth 9 Kelly points. Right? So nothing for October, November, December, but 1 point each for January through August. So in this way of setting up the point scheme, the whole year is worth 9 points, and therefore a fair share will have to be worth 3 points or more for her. So we can go through and ask which of the 3 shares are actually worth at least 3 Kelly points, from Kelly's point of view. Share 1 is a fair share for Kelly. It's worth 4, and that's more than 3, so that works. May through August is also fair for her, but September through December is not. It would be unacceptable to tell her, you get the store location September through December. Okay. So she'll take either of these perfectly well. Before going on to the next video, answer the following 2 questions. Which shares, as Jason has marked them off, are fair shares for Lauren? And is there a standoff here? If not, what's a specific way you can give each player one of the shares that Jason has marked off?